Good morning, world.
And good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on this Tuesday. Little update on Paul Carey, who you hear every time we come out of break. That dramatic voice used to be Ernie Harwell's partner in calling the Tigers game. He had a heart attack about 3 weeks ago, but he's back home and doing very well. He had 3 stents put in, one of those deals, but he's going to be fine. Got an email from his wife just a couple of days ago, and he says that Paul is doing extremely well, so we're glad to hear that. We're coming to you live from the American Metal Roofs studio here, just a few blocks away from the state capitol. Gary Austin in the newsroom this morning. Gary, I'd say good morning, but it's not a particularly good morning. We're in the midst right now, it seems, of the biggest nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. The situation in Japan continues to deteriorate. Here's a post from the BBC News website, which says, as of 6 o'clock this morning, just 7 minutes ago, a Japanese nuclear safety official has confirmed reports that water inside the waste fuel storage pool for the number 4 Fukushima reactor is, in fact, boiling. And that means it's creating steam, and that steam is being released into the atmosphere, and that ain't good.
Yeah, anytime you have that, of course, the potential for serious radiation exposure for anybody even near that area increases. I tell you, Rich, this is a problem really spinning out of control. And once they get it handled, I mean, just assessing this has got to be, I mean, what an enormous job. I mean, there's never been anything quite like this in a long, long time that you have to deal with. And now we're getting word, too, that a crippled nuclear power plant in the northeastern part of Japan. And we've got a spent fuel storage pond. You know, one thing about stories like this, we learn about a lot of things we never knew before. Like we're learning what a spent fuel storage pond is, and we know that's a place where a lot of this bad stuff is kept, and you start tinkering with that, it's serious trouble. And as a result of the tsunami and earthquake, that's what's happening. This thing is being disrupted somehow, and now a fire is broken out, and that could lead to the possibility of even more of this radioactive contamination being spread about. And we're also getting word, too, what's going on over there puts an added focus as to what could potentially happen here if the same sort of thing ever happened. Heaven forbid. Now we have officials at the Palisades nuclear power plant that's near South Haven. They say they are ready just in case the worst should ever happen. Obviously, worries have gone up ever since that earthquake and tsunami hit Japan. And a number of nuclear power plants in that country are very close to meltdown. We have Mark Savage. He's the communications manager at Palisades. He said the plant is well prepared for disaster, and he said he feels safer than driving down the road.
Well, he's going to say that, though. I mean, he's running the plant. An official from Brookhaven said that the reactor there, which is not far from New York City, is designed to withstand a 3.0 earthquake. Yeah. Well, hello, the earthquake in Japan was a 9.0. Yeah. I mean, so they can say this all they want, but, the right sort of circumstances were to come about. This situation, to compare it to 3 Mile Island, it's hard to believe that was over 30 years ago now. But it seems to me that what's occurred here with these buildings exploding, with 3 of the reactor buildings exploding, you remember during that situation at TMI that they were worried about the hydrogen building up inside the containment building. And what it seems to me has happened here, that the hydrogen has exploded and has broken through the containment buildings. What they're saying, though, is that the reactors themselves have not yet been breached, although the explosion which occurred last night at about 5 o'clock our time may have, in fact, damaged the containment vessel at one of the reactors, which has prompted, I don't know if you saw this last night, but on the CBC National News, which they call the National, they did a story about people in British Columbia beginning to take precautions. And I'm looking at a graphic right now which shows that if this radiation reaches the jet stream, it'll travel at about 50 miles an hour across the Pacific. Will take 4 days to get to San Francisco, another 2 days to get to Chicago, and we're probably half a day or so beyond Chicago if the jet stream is in that configuration that they have it here. So this is not just a Japan problem.
Yeah, it is true, Rich. Of course, what you say, I mean, the experts are saying that sort of thing, the scenario you just outlined, it's possible, but unlikely. But the fact that it's even possible, like you say, is certainly reason for concern. Back to the Palisades nuclear plant here for a second. That plant's been operating, as we know, along the shores of Lake Michigan for a long time, nearly 40 years. One minor leak reported. That prompted a shutdown last year. But gee, you know, we've become so reliant, haven't we, on nuclear energy and the like. I mean, what do we do? I mean, some are saying, hey, you know, what happened in Japan could happen here. We ought to take extreme precautions and look into possibly shutting these things down for good. I mean, that's one way to make sure a disaster won't happen, is just pull the plug entirely on these things.
Well, you take the power plant in Monroe, and that's been in operation for well over 40 years, and you wonder what the lifespan is on a plant like that. How long? What was its lifespan designed to be?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. And, I mean, something this severe, I mean, we know the experts in Japan, when they design these things, they know where they live. They knew when they put these things together, when they built them from scratch, they knew the possibility, because of, you know, where they are, where they're configured in the world, the possibility of an earthquake is more likely there than in a lot of other places in the world. Of course, you never know from one place to another, but the likelihood, they knew that going in. These things were built really good, but even with this super great construction, look what's happening. I mean, serious concern. But, you know, Rich, there are some, like I was saying earlier, that say, you know, this is case in point. This nuclear business is too dangerous. We ought to get out of it entirely. But the problem is we've become so reliant on it. If we just suddenly pull the plug on nuclear facilities, for example, in this country, for fear what's happening in Japan could happen here, I mean, just turn out the lights. I mean, we are so reliant on it now. What do we do? It's a good question.
How reliant are we exactly? I mean, how many nuclear power plants do we have, and what percentage of our electricity are they producing? I mean, I don't have the answers to those questions. We do know that there hasn't been a nuclear power plant built in this country since 3 Mile Island back in the late 1970s.
So it has been that long.
Oh, yeah. So, and, you know, they cost billions and billions of dollars. President Obama is not wavering, though. He says that America needs more nuclear power, in spite of you know, what's going on in Japan. And they always, you know, anything man builds can be destroyed by nature. I mean, we've known that since well, if you want to go back as far as the Titanic or even farther back in history, there are engineering mistakes that they made, and that's what they are. They're mistakes, and they come back to haunt you. But you know, we shall see. But we're always mindful, at least I always am, that Chernobyl, when it exploded, and that's been about 20 years now, it irradiated and left uninhabitable an area the size of New Jersey.
Yeah.
So that's what you're playing with, you know, when you get involved in this.
Well, it's certainly serious concern, and what do you do? We have become reliant on these facilities, and without them, I mean, who knows where we'd be. I mean, you know, that being the case, what the future holds for these nuclear facilities. I mean, we remember 3 Mile Island all those years ago, and boy, that set back the nuclear industry, you know, who knows how far back. You know, and that sort of thing happens. I mean, in Chernobyl is another thing. I mean, you remember all the bad stuff, and the bad stuff, you know, few and far between in the big picture. Just think of all the work.
I understand all of that, but the problem is it only takes a mistake, and you've got an area the size of New Jersey you can't live in anymore.
I know. Yeah, we put so much faith in those who build these things and those who make sure all of the safety precautions are all in place. I mean, think of how much stock we put in the people who make all that possible. And I mean, these people have big responsibility, and we have to, I mean, we're putting our faith in them that they're doing their jobs right. But like you say, Rich, when it comes to, you know, a disaster like this that is out of our hands completely, an earthquake, a tsunami, I mean, what do you do?
Right. An update from the United Nations. The UN's weather agency says Japanese winds are dispersing radioactive material over the ocean, and there's no danger for Japan or the region for now. So those winds are blowing out to the west. But again, you know, if you're in Hawaii right now, maybe you're a little bit nervous because it's heading your way. The question is, how much is there? How dispersed will it be once it arrives? So
yeah, Paul Fales is from Monroe County, and he was missing since the earthquake and tsunami, you know, first hit. That was last Friday, and friends and family back here in Michigan have been really concerned about this. Well, he's been found, and he's okay.
Good.
Yeah, he was a 2010 grad of Eastern Michigan University. He was living in that area right around Tokyo. He was working as a teacher there, and but again, glad to hear, friends and family relieved to hear that that this fellow Paul Fales has been found safe and sound.
Yeah, well, there are a ton of stories like that. I've primarily been following this through the foreign news agencies, BBC, Reuters and NHK World Service, which is the Japanese broadcasting service, and they do provide broadcasts in English. And on the BBC last night, they told the story of, it was a group of 20 college students who had not been heard from for 3 days, and they were found, and they were unharmed. So it's always good to hear some good news out of this, but boy, there's certainly not enough of it right now.
Well, and the death toll well into the thousands.
Sure.
That's what the experts are figuring. We should note here too, this update is service of our friends at American Metal Roofs. You'll never have to worry about the weather with a beautiful, guaranteed American Metal Roof. Learn more at AmericanMetalRoofs.com. AmericanMetalRoofs.com. One last thing here, Rich. The Michigan House today is expected to vote on that controversial, contentious plan that would give new powers to emergency managers. The state Senate has already okayed this by a vote of 26-12. And barring any surprises, the House will do the same probably sometime today or tomorrow, and then Governor Snyder has assured us he's going to sign it.
Okay, all right. Well, anyways, I have some thoughts on that. Gary, good visiting with you as always, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick Shields in the morning. We'll be back with more right after this. Rich Kincaid joining you live from the American Metal Roofs studio. Good morning, everybody. Rachel Chavez here, Jordan McCarrollton as well, as we all team up to fill in for Michael Patrick. When Michael leaves, takes 3 people to replace Michael Patrick and Amanda K. Wall, who are jetting as we speak to Ireland. They're due at Shannon Airport at about 9 o'clock our time this morning, and we'll, of course, join you on the air come Thursday, which is something's going on.
So I've heard.
Some sort of deal. So I'll be with you today, tomorrow, and Friday, and then Thursday will be Michael Patrick live from Ireland for some kind of deal. So I didn't get a memo or anything on it. They just said, hey, we're going to be over here. And Michael's a jet setter. Now, Amanda, I imagine, just got to be a thrill of a lifetime for her. You know, Michael Patrick's used to just heading out at the drop of a hat and hanging out with famous people.
Yeah. You should have seen Amanda yesterday morning. She was literally jumping up and down because she was so excited. It was like a little kid going to Disney World. Well,
and I've taken a little kid to Disney World, and they have a lot of fun. So hopefully Amanda will. I got to go to Disneyland once. I've got a story about everything. It was a media junket to celebrate. It was like the 15th anniversary of Disney World down in Orlando, as opposed to Disneyland in Los Angeles, where I actually did take my daughter. And she rides the teacups after we waited in line for 45 minutes, the famous teacups, right? And she's 3. And the ride ends, and I said, do you want to do it again? And she says, sure. And so I start to get up, and she says, why are you getting up? I says, we have to stand in a line again. Well, that doesn't sound right. I want to ride it now, you know. But at any rate, we went down there, and they really put on a show for us. They closed down the theme park one night at like 5 o'clock. And it's built, I don't know how many people Disney World is designed to hold, but it's got to be well over 100,000. And the number of people they had flown in for this event was something on the order of 20,000. And so there was no line for any rides. Any concession stand you went to, you didn't have to pay. They just gave it to you. And then the next night, they closed Epcot Center the same way at about 5 o'clock. Spectacular fireworks show. And Epcot Center, I don't know if you've been there, but there's a lagoon, and it is surrounded by maybe 13 or 15 displays which are designed to depict different countries. Canada, for example, has a miniature parliament building. The United States has got a miniature Independence Hall. And every one of these displays it's a bar/restaurant, and the waiters, the staff there, are people from that country. For example, by the time we got to Canada, which was the last one, when we turned left, and so coming around the lagoon, Canada was the last stop. So you go in and you have a nice Canadian beer, and I started singing "Oh Canada" because I know it from Hockey Night in Canada. And this girl rushes up to me with tears in her eyes. We're in Orlando, Florida. She goes, "Are you from Canada? I'm from Barrie." And we just had an amazing time. And then about a year or two later, we went back just as regular, normal visitors. It wasn't nearly as much fun. No. You had to pay for everything. You had to stand in line. I'm telling you, the only way to go is on one of these junkets. It was quite unbelievable, as a matter of fact. So at any rate, if Disney World ever invites you down, it was crazy. The only thing we paid for was parking the car at the airport in Detroit. I mean, we got down. We had a nice hotel. They had bus service everywhere. It was unbelievable.
That's living the dream. Imagine if you were 13 years old, you know?
Oh, I guess. But it turns out, well, you can't drink when you're 13. But, we were of legal drinking age when she wasn't my wife at the time. I guess I shouldn't say that, but nonetheless, we went down there. We just had a grand old time. So, at any rate, there's a story from long ago, but it just struck us. We were just laughing about it when we went down to cover Tiger Spring Training one year. And so, well, let's go over to Disney World, and that wasn't nearly as much fun. Well, we able to segue into sports because we mentioned the Tigers in passing. The Michigan State women, this is a bit of a surprise, have been selected as a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and you would think that the Big Ten champion Spartans would have gotten a higher seed than that.
Seemed like a harsh seed for winning the Big Ten.
Yeah. I mean, I know they, Ohio State beat them beat them in the regular season finale, beat them in the tournament, etc. But still, a bit of I thought maybe, well, clearly it seems to me the Big Ten not as highly regarded in women's basketball as it is in men's basketball. How many Big Ten teams are in the tournament? In the men's tournament, 7, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. But how do you get 11 teams out of the Big East?
Well, I mean, you start with 16, so it's about the same percentage of teams that came from the Big Ten as came from the Big East.
It's still
a
lot.
It that way.
It's
it is
still a lot.
Big East was very good this year. I mean, I wouldn't.
I'll tell you what. I think Michigan State made the tournament by beating Purdue. But I don't like these end of the season tournaments. A couple of years ago, when Michigan State went in, they had won the Big Ten in the regular season. And to me, it just didn't make any sense to play 3 games in 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then turn around and start the NCAA tournament on Thursday. Why would you do that to yourself? So, I mean, I was more than happy when they lost in round number 2 and didn't have to play another game on Sunday. I was mildly concerned when Penn State, whooped them on Saturday the way they did. But
Penn State really probably needed to win that game to get into the tournament,
right,
where Michigan State didn't.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I figured that was what had happened on Friday night. Purdue didn't need the victory. I mean, they dominated Michigan State in the 2 regular season matchups, but they didn't really need that victory on Friday, but Michigan State really did.
Yeah, Purdue came out really flat.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you'll see that in the tournaments, and that's why, I'm thinking it's kind of a waste of time.
We don't know what's going to happen.
Well, see, but we're not to the we don't know what's going to happen part yet. That begins, I guess it begins Wednesday with these ridiculous play-in games. Right, 4 of them, whatever. To me, the first round is Thursday when the tournament actually begins. So you can call it whatever you want. They're calling it the second round now, but So at any rate, they've got Michigan State playing UCLA. UCLA lethal on the break, according to Tom Izzo. That's the headline this morning in the Detroit Free Press. And the coach of Tennessee, Bruce Pearl, says U of M is, quote, a very, very tough matchup, which is not. How's that a headline? What's a coach going to say? They always say that, okay? I mean, seriously, I continue to spend years and years covering, for example, the Red Wings. I'm pretty sure I've never gotten a decent quote out of a hockey player, okay? They will tell you, if I can look myself in the mirror tomorrow, I'll know I've done my job, How vain is that?
Well, there's almost no benefit to these guys to giving you a quote.
I know. Well, here's when Chris Chelios was a Chicago Blackhawk, they were playing at Joe Louis. It was January, and the play went up ice, and Chelios was way behind the play, and so was Sergei Fedorov. And right there at center ice, Chelly just sticks him, just pitchforks him right there in the neutral zone. Fedorov goes down like he's dead. And everybody in the arena saw it except the referee. People are booing, screaming, whatever, and Detroit drew. Well, he didn't draw, but they earned a matchup with Chicago in the conference final. And I'm trying to get something workable. And so I go and interview Chelios. Well, it's a gaggle. I'm one of the people holding a microphone in front of Chelios' face. And I said, so you're going to be slashing Sergei Fedorov again? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, come on, Chris. Everybody saw it. The guy went down in a heap. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And we had a back and forth that lasted for, I don't know, maybe a minute, and they wound up leading the TV sports with it because it was it was somewhat confrontational. It was the only, decent piece of tape that came out of this whole thing, but Chelios denies all. Well, later I hear from the Red Wings trainer who heard from the Chicago trainer that Chelios gets on the bus 5 minutes later, and he's like, who was that guy asking me these questions? I never speared him, I slashed him. So he knew exactly what we were all talking about. But again, it's you don't always get. Well, there's no benefit, as you say, in him coming out and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to hack him again." So, but if you would think if anybody was to do that, it'd be a hockey player. I mean, they're you know who the most macho athletes are. I'm going to rule out ladies golf. Okay. All right, baseball players. Honestly, I'm telling you, these guys have a greater sense of their own masculinity than any other athlete. It's always struck me why they're as macho as they are. A guy who stands around half the day out in left field, scratching himself, waiting for the occasional fly ball. But the thing of it is, you could die on any pitch. I mean, you got a guy throwing a hard ball at you at 98 miles an hour. You have to be pretty brave to confront that. But they are far and away, even more than football players. They think they're the most masculine of athletes.
Well, baseball is like an individual sport that's disguised as a team sport. So I wonder if those guys, it's so ego-driven, what you do at the plate or what you do as a pitcher, as opposed to a football team where you do have to work together in that way if you're going to be successful.
Yeah, but you would think the most macho guys would be those football players who are engaged. Every play is a full-speed collision out there.
I think those guys are pretty macho.
I do too, but you'd be surprised how many just soft-spoken, gentlemanly players you talk to, after a football. And I've stood. They don't let us do it anymore, but it used to be at Lions games that they would send us down to stand on the sidelines, actually behind the end zone, with 2 minutes to go so that we would be in position to go to the locker room as soon as the game was over. What they do now is with 5 minutes to play, they shepherd everybody to a room, and you wind up watching the key minutes, if it's a close game at any rate, the key minutes on a television monitor, which just drives me insane.
What's the point of being there, then?
I could have stayed home for this, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, I just remember Bo Jackson playing for the Oakland Raiders. Could have been 10 feet from me, just getting hammered by a defensive back. I mean, you could feel the collision. Incredible violence. And Jackson just hops right up, no problem. I mean, it was hard to believe. And not Gale Sayers, Walter Payton, the great late running back from the Bears, thanks. After a football game, not that I'm in there to check out the athletes, but we're interviewing him, again, the press gaggle, and he's just wearing a towel. And he's sitting there, and you look at this guy, and he must have had 0% body fat, just chiseled, every inch muscle, and you could see why this guy never got hurt, or at least bruised. There was nothing on him but bruise, all right? And an athlete, at least a hockey player, they'll tease another player if he gets a bruise because they'll say, well, that's because you're fat. It's the fat that gets bruised, all right? And I got a bruise one time. I played goal, and this thing was like a foot. We haven't gotten much sports done here, have we? This bruise was about a foot circumference on the inside of my thigh because it went down butterflied and took a slap shot on the inside of my leg. It was a beauty. And I actually showed it to the Red Wings medical guy, John Wharton, and because I was actually a little concerned. And Wharton starts calling players in, to look at this thing.
Check out this chunky thigh.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that. It was just the sheer size of the bruise. And Mike Vernon, who was the Wings goalie at the time, comes in, takes one look at the thing, looks at me and says, you should let it go in. So goaltending advice from one of the all-time greats there, Mike Vernon. All right. Well, that was the worst sportscast ever. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick. We will continue on MPS in the Morning right after this.
The goalie jumps and the players bump.
And Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Tuesday. Michael Patrick is on his way to Ireland, as you know, and he'll be weighing in, checking in, doing the show live on Thursday, which is St. Patrick's Day, we understand, with some sort of holiday. So we'll look forward to that. Rich Kincaid in the American Metal Roofs studio. I don't think it's too early to pick our Northwood University Leader of the Day. Do you guys? Is that okay? Ready to do it? All right, I'm going to go with those 50 guys that are at the nuclear reactor in Japan as we speak, trying to put out the fire. They let 750 employees at that plant, which exploded yesterday, again, go home. But there are 50 of the bravest people in the world fighting the fire there. And so they're on the scene, and they are our Northwood University Leaders of the Day today. Northwood University promoting free enterprise and celebrating 51 years of producing leaders. On the other end of our line right now, Kevin Epling, and we're going to talk a little bit about something, well, bully side, as a matter of fact. Kevin Epling is with Bully Police USA, was recently at the White House at their anti-bullying summit. Kevin, it's got to say something that the White House is taking bullying seriously enough to host an event.
Well, it is a very important, long overdue first step to have someone in the White House seeing that this is a major issue. So it is really wonderful in that respect. And it was kind of odd to sit 6 feet away from the president and listen to him say things, I've been saying for the last 5 years. But it was a great feeling.
You've got a project coming up, the Bully Side Project, which is a production at the Wharton Sale. Tickets are on sale for this, which is coming up on March 30th at 7 p.m. What is the Bully Side Project?
The Bully Side Project is a performance piece that was derived from a book called Bully Side in America, which my wife Tammy and I contributed to with our personal story. And it tells the story of 10 individuals across the United States who faced bullying in their schools, faced harassment from their peers, and unfortunately, ended their lives because of it. And it's very emotional, it's educational, and it focuses on 4 stories that happened right here in the state of Michigan. So 4 out of those 10 are our own kids from Michigan. And I think it is it's a powerful performance, and one of the best things is there's a talk back after the show where the audience can actually ask questions. There's a Q&A with the cast members as to why they're doing this, and it is one of those pieces that tell a horrific story in a very nice way so that people can understand who these children were, what they went through, and now what we can all do about it, because anti-bullying really takes a community approach. We all have to be part of the solution.
How do we do that?
Well, I think the very first thing we have to really acknowledge that it is an issue. It is one of the major issues in our schools today. Everybody wants higher test scores. Everyone wants to lower the truancy rate. Everyone wants to drop the dropout rate. We can't get to any of those if we don't tackle the issue of kids being safe, because if kids aren't safe, they're not going to learn. So we all have to be part of the solution. So I think parents, teachers, law enforcement have to work together, understand this is an issue. We talk about it. We set up programs. And one of the best programs in any school can come from the students themselves. Empower them to act, empower them to step in and step up for each other. That's going to be one of the most powerful tools we have in our arsenal.
Nobody wants to say they've been victimized.
No, a lot of people don't want to say they've been victimized because they're afraid of what's going to come after. We've had this stigma in our schools that if you rat somebody out, if you snitch, things are going to get worse. Well, it's only going to get worse if nobody does anything about it. So we have to activate, those teachers if they're going to do something. And there are a lot of teachers who are doing great things on this. There's schools that are doing great things. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page, and that's one of the issues, like having base legislation in states. Michigan's only one of 5 states that doesn't have an anti-bullying law. So we want to make sure that everybody has a base to kind of work from so that they can go forth and make a change. We have to think of anti-bullying as a cultural change, that we're just not going to allow this violence at our schools anymore.
I got to tell you, I remember in junior high, some kids are big and some kids are big later. You have a disparity. Some kids are really big at 12 or 13 years old and takes others. But I remember, I had a bully, and I still remember this guy's name, and I'm 55 now.
Well, and I think that's the key, is every conference I have gone to over the last 7.5, almost 8 years, and I talk about bullying, everyone will raise their hand because everyone has a bullying story. But I ask, well, what have you done about it to change it for your kids? And nobody raises their hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's this cycle. Why are we continually in this cycle? We have to actually get in, roll up our sleeves, and say, we're not going to allow our kids to have, a bad time in school that we did. We
Right.
want to change that, because, you don't just get over bullying, you bury it. And it will surface later. And now, more and more, there's more research being done that there are kids at younger and younger ages being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome because of what they're going through.
Kevin Epling, it's the Bully Side Project. It's coming to the Wharton Center. Tickets are on sale now. We say it's coming to the Wharton Center. We'll tell you it's coming to the Wharton Center on Wednesday, March 30th at 7 p.m. Kevin, thanks for the update, and thanks for your good works.
Thank you, sir, very much.
All right, Kevin Epling here on MPS in the Morning. Rich Kincaid, Rachel Chavez, and Jordan McCarlton all filling in for Michael Patrick on this Tuesday morning. We'll take a break, come back with more right after this. Yeah, funny thing is we're kind of guessing about that ourselves here at the American Metal Roofs studio. In the shadow of the state capitol, it is Grand Traverse Tuesday, sponsored by the Traverse City Convention Visitors Bureau. All right, beautiful part of our great state of Michigan. And, we had the Mr. Epling on just a few moments ago talking about this bullying issue, and it hit home to me. Again, while he was in the middle of talking about it, I thought of a name that I had not thought of. And I don't know how many years, decades. But this was something that happened when I was 12 or 13 years old. I was in 7th grade, as a matter of fact. I remember. And this kid, was way bigger than me and way meaner than me. And, I remember getting beat up, thrown into a locker, this sort of thing. I wound up getting suspended because I was involved in a fight. And I'm like, that wasn't a fight. That was me getting beat up. It just struck me in the middle of that interview that this particular name, and I'm not going to mention it on the air because who knows, maybe he's a nice guy now, 40 years later. But I'm 55 years old, and I remember something like that from when I was 12 vividly. So the fact that kids commit suicide as a result of bullying, I almost cried when I was listening to that.
It's really awful, and it's an increasing problem, I know, with the cyberbullying, what's happening online now with people being able to blog about other kids,
sure.
Or, spread rumors on their Facebook pages.
Yeah.
It's a very serious issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, you had an issue with that.
Yep, I've had a couple of stories. I mean, everyone does, believe it or not.
See, I thought it only happened to boys.
No, girls can get picked on too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did not know that. I mean, that's why when he was saying, no parent at these meetings that he runs, no parent ever says, or has anything to say about their own kid being bullied, and he took that as a tacit approval that it was okay. But I've got a daughter. It never occurred to me that she would be victimized by bullying. I will tell you one thing about my Laura, though. She eliminated her Facebook account for good. Maybe 5-6 months ago, and she says she's much happier for it. So I don't know what any of that means, but at any rate, she's not a Facebook user. We're joined right now by Ray Tellman, the Executive Director of the Middle Cities Education Association. The event that's being kicked off today is called Enroll Michigan. What is this campaign all about, Ray?
Enroll Michigan is a statewide campaign being launched today to enroll as many uninsured children as possible in My Child or Healthy Kids.
How much longer are those programs going to be around? What impact are the proposed budget cuts going to have on those particular programs?
Well, hopefully with the federal support for these programs, they will be able to continue on. We have no reason to think that there's any jeopardy to these programs, and there are 172,000 uninsured children in Michigan that we're going to go after, and believe that about 90% of those children are eligible.
Why aren't they enrolled already?
Well, there's probably a couple, 2 or 3 things. I think there's a lack of awareness, perhaps on the part of some parents. I think some folks may have the false impression they earn too much money. And there could even be language barriers as examples of a couple, 2 or 3 things.
I'll tell you what, I got unemployed one time, which happens from time to time in the radio business, and we took advantage of My Child. We found it was, until we got back on our feet financially a few months later, it really helped us out. Laura got excellent care at great cost.
And I would add that it may be a surprise to some of the listeners, but that a family of 4 that's making about $44,000 or even more are eligible in these programs, and it is simple to get involved. All they have to do is get online to www.enrollmichigan.com or just call 211.
Ray, how does the program work? What are the benefits like that we're talking about here? In
Child or Healthy Kids, there's a myriad of things, and I'll just name a few.
Sure.
There's beyond what you would expect: doctor visits and health checkups and immunization and medicine. There are additional things like dental services, vision services, hearing and speech therapy. So it's a full platform of services for these children.
if you go to see the doctor just for a checkup, or you've got a cold or the flu, what sort of copay are we talking about, that sort of thing?
Well, the program, either of these programs have none or minimal. And when I say minimal, the max is about $10 a month, and it can be free.
Okay, so you're hoping to get the word out on that. That's the main point here today, I presume.
It is, and in fact, this is an ongoing activity. But this year, we're embarking on a campaign in Rome, Michigan, that's really focused toward this fall's enrollment, so that in August and September, when students are going back to school, we're going to have a full-fledged campaign, which seems like it's early in March to get started, but there are a number of things that are being set up in schools starting today that will be tailored to those particular school districts, be they parent meetings or newsletters or other options that are available that hopefully will get the word out to as many of those 172,000 children as is possible.
All right, Ray, thanks very much. Good luck with this.
Well, thank you very much.
Ray Tellman, the Executive Director of the Middle Cities Education Association. State Representatives Wayne Schmidt and Frank Foster will join us after the top of the hour. We're going to talk about this controversial bit of legislation regarding the emergency managers. We'll find out what's up with that as we continue. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick. It's Tuesday on MPS in the Morning.
Good morning, world.
Good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Tuesday as Michael and Amanda wing their way towards Ireland and the big St. Patrick's Day show they'll be doing live from Ireland on Thursday morning. A couple of breaking stories this morning related to the situation in Japan, where yesterday there was yet another explosion at the Fukushima nuclear facility. This one apparently more serious than the others. Germany is taking some actions this morning. Their Chancellor, Angela Merkel, says that all 7 of Germany's nuclear power plants that began operation before 1980 will be provisionally shut down, although no time scale has been given. The details will be agreed upon next Tuesday. She also says all German reactors will undergo checks and safety questions about the plants will be answered by mid-June. Meanwhile, Germany's Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle says that what we are witnessing in Japan right now today is, quote, an apocalypse. He says the international community must do everything it can to help Japan, and adds it may shift Europe's approach to nuclear power. So those developments in the wake of this triple-headed disaster, which is ongoing, developing as we speak here this morning. And we are speaking right now in our American Metal Roofs studio with Wayne Schmidt, State Representative from Traverse City. Wayne, thanks for coming down. Good to see you.
Good morning, Rich. Great to be
on. Let's talk about the financial manager situation. This story has created a controversy nationally. Tell me about this. Here's the way I understand it, all right, that the governor can declare a financial emergency, simply declare it without any parameters being in place in this legislation, and the emergency manager can go in and, at his discretion, dismiss a town's mayor, a town's city council, an entire school board, all of these things, which on its face doesn't sound particularly democratic.
Well, really, what he can't just go in arbitrarily and do all of this. The new law that's being proposed sets out a number of steps that you have to go through, much more than you do today, to have an emergency manager in place. To have a community, a school board or a municipality get to that stage, it will have had to have missed so many different steps, which include many right now, that they don't report their current financial status, that they don't show their plan to get out of debt, how to rectify the situation. So there's a variety of steps that it needs to go through.
Can you give me some specifics? I know you don't have the legislation in front of you, and I'll confess I haven't read the legislation. I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll try and do that today so I can speak about it more authoritatively tomorrow. But can you give us specifics on what these parameters are? Because you can understand why people would be concerned if indeed one person can arbitrarily take steps like this.
Right. The steps are including your financial plan with the government. Currently, right now, you need to do that. A debt reduction plan, those steps still remain in place, and that they report into the state treasurer. And so once that they show that they can't make the corrections, that they've filed the reports with the state, that the state treasurer and the governor have realized that this community, and you have to remember that in order to get to this point, that community would just have to continually do things wrong and spend beyond their means. There are so many checks before that happen, what we're doing is it really becomes a big stick, quite frankly. But I think most of the communities, if not all, will go through the various steps to make sure that they do turn that tide around or turn that ship around financially before the governor has to do something like this. I know that the removing the elected officials is not quite as it seems there. They're still there, but this is a temporary financial manager, emergency manager, to get things done. Sometimes they need to go in, and it will be a person. It is not going to be a corporation. You know, that misnomer's out there too. But that they can go in, change things, and then it goes back to the board. But the fact is that you would have to see repeated fiscal ineptitude by a number of elected officials. I mean,
I guess I'd feel more comfortable if I knew what those repeated missteps
just the fact
were.
that they're continuing to spend beyond their means, that they're on the verge of bankruptcy, that they could default on their bonds, a variety of those type of obligations. When a community gets to that point, we as the state, and I mean, this is all the state taxpayers. A lot of people are worried, oh, this is going to happen to my community. I've heard that from a lot of my constituents up north. Well, no, the communities up north that I've talked to, the managers and the people, if they've had a loss in their tax base, they've corrected that in their budget. I mean, sometimes that does include laying off workers, you know, in a variety of capacities. It does include renegotiating contracts, whether it's public safety or public sanitation, whatever, you know, public works. So communities have to adjust. This is legislation that's designed for communities that just refuse to admit what is happening. And as I've said before, I think it's going to be rarely used, if at all. It just becomes a little bit bigger stick to make sure that communities do get in line.
And these emergency managers would have the authority to void labor contracts.
They could, and then they'd have to go back, obviously, and renegotiate.
Well, I don't.
Yes, my apologies. But yes, they would have the ability to go in and renegotiate those contracts.
Well, it doesn't say renegotiate. It says they could void them.
Well, they void them, and then you go back and figure out what the new contract is.
It sounds, Franklin, I think this is why labor is descending on the Capitol tomorrow, like you're trying to do a backdoor Wisconsin situation here and eliminate collective bargaining.
Well, but here's the thing. A community, a school board can go in, labor can meet with administration right now, anytime, and sit down and say, okay, our city, our school board, we're seeing some financial troubles coming ahead. We know if it's declining property values or loss in student population or whatever the situation may be, and though labor and management can sit down and go, okay, this is how much money we're going to have. We know the tight times are coming up. Let's make this work so that we have minimal layoffs, disruptions to the citizens of that community or the students of that school district, and you can do that now. But if labor digs in its heels and management or the elected officials dig in their heels and think, you know, oh, well, it's going to turn around because we're going to have a big new plant someday, and labor just thinks that, you know, everything's hunky-dory, well, then that's the recipe for disaster. That's what we want to prevent. Communities going down that road, and the need of a financial manager, an emergency financial manager.
Will you be listening to those protesters tomorrow?
I've taken testimony. I chair the Commerce Committee, and we've discussed a variety of labor issues. I always accept the input. That was one of the things that I campaigned on. It's one of the things that Speaker Bolger campaigned on, that we're going to get all of the information, that we're going to be doing this in an open and transparent fashion. And we certainly haven't been ramrodding those bills through. There's been a lot of, whether it's protesters, testimony in committee. We heard the people banning the elected officials for 6 or 10 years. That was removed. So we've listened. We've adopted things and taken that input in.
The amendment proposed by the Democrats, which would limit the pay of an emergency manager to no more than the governor's salary, sounded pretty common sense to me, and you guys voted it down.
Well, I wasn't there at that committee, so I don't know the exact details of why they did that. I think you want to offer the flexibility if it, let's say that the governor's salary, I believe now is approximately,
I think it's 169 is what I heard.
169.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all took a 10% pay cut and everything, so I'm not sure what the governor's salary is. But let's say you have someone that could come in, turn a city around or a school district, in the event that everything is going wrong. And it was $180. That was that person's, he or she's price to fix it. And they've had success and all that. Now, of course, I'm not expecting anyone to come in, though, and make $1 million, so I can see why that safeguard was considered. But I think you're going to have the state treasurer, you're going to have the governor. Of course, you have legislative oversight to prevent those type of abuses, too.
Got an email day before yesterday from my school district. Maybe it was yesterday because yesterday was Monday and 2 days ago would have been Sunday. But they are holding a special meeting tonight. It's going to be contentious, I'm sure, because they're talking about privatizing every school service, maintenance, cafeterias, this sort of thing. And they said, and this is the sentence that jumped out at me, we have to prepare a budget assuming there will be no state funding whatsoever coming in. Then this is a district last year that cut $20 million from the budget. Is that a possibility?
No, there will be state funding. We are proposing, or the governor, I should say, has proposed a budget that cuts approximately 4% from school aid funding. That's, certainly many households, many businesses have cut significantly more from their budgets. So I don't see that we're not going to help fund things, not at all. There's still going to be funding there, a stable amount, but we want a sustainable amount too. And so right now, you only have X amount of money, and this is one of the cuts, that 4%. And
we have just a minute left. The film tax credit, that's creating a big hubbub, the elimination of that. It's a lot, and I'm talking about people that I know that are, for example, have gotten jobs as caterers at film locations, this sort of thing. It has created a lot of jobs.
Well, the governor has proposed the $25 million to set aside for the film credits, or the new way of appropriating them. I think that we're reviewing everything right now. We're at a point in Michigan's budget, fiscally, that we need to review all the programs, whether it's the film incentives, whether it's brownfields, all of our spending. We have to review it because the changes we make now really will affect probably the next 10 to 20 years. So I've seen some successes. You've also heard some of the failures and programs that weren't working quite as well. That's what we're reviewing right now to make a much stronger program.
Wayne, thanks for coming in. Thanks for facing the questions.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, Wayne Schmidt, representative from Traverse City, our guest here this morning. We'll take a break. Be back with more of MPS in the Morning. All right, Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on a Tuesday. We lost our thing there momentarily. We may still have. But hopefully we're with you on the air, and if we're not, well, that's going to be a problem. But at any rate, I can hear myself in my ears, so that's a good sign. Oftentimes, if you can hear yourself, other people are hearing you. See, I'm just the guy who sits in front of the microphone. Here's the sum total of what I know about the technical end of it. I talk here, it comes out in your car, or it shows up on your television screen. So, at any rate, let's take a break from all the madness of the morning and talk a little bit about sports. The Tigers won again yesterday. How about those guys? They are now 13-7 in Grapefruit League play and trail. Well, actually, if you do the math, they're technically tied for first place in the Grapefruit League with Seattle, although Seattle has a higher winning percentage. They've played a couple more games than have the Tigers, but 13-7, not too shabby for the Tigers, who beat Washington yesterday by a final score of 4-2. And I don't really have any details on that game. It's tomorrow. They're going to be on television. And if you have MLB.com, or if you go to MLB.com, they show a lot of spring training games there. And I think the Tigers, between now and the end of spring training, are going to be on 6 times. So you get a little sneak peek before they open the regular season at month's end against the New York Yankees. That's one thing that strikes me about the NCAA tournament, is the fact that by the time the tournament moves into its second weekend, the baseball season will be underway. So I'm, being a baseball guy, I'm all in favor of that. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick. Rachel Chavez is here. Jordan McCarleton is here with us as well. We got to talk a little bit here, Jordan, about Jim Tressel, the embattled football. It feels good to say that, doesn't it? The embattled football coach at Ohio State. Nothing against Ohio State except, well, everything. Being here from the great state of Michigan, we are natural enemies of the Buckeyes. And Ohio State coach Jim Tressel yesterday told supporters and reporters in his first public speaking engagement about his 2-game suspension and about the fine for violating NCAA rules. And he said, and this is the quote that jumps out at you, I apologize for everything that we've been through. What? Shouldn't you apologize for, cheating?
Your actions?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Rather than how it's impacted you or the football team. I mean, it just seems like he's not necessarily taking responsibility and feeling as though this was forced upon him in some way rather than something that he actively participated in.
Quote, I sincerely apologize for what we've been through. He was talking to boosters. I apologize for the fact that I wasn't able to find the ones to partner with to handle our difficult and complex situation. Hey, buddy, you got emails last spring saying you had players on the take, and your defense is, I didn't know who to call. Come on.
Or that he wanted to protect the lawyer in the situation.
Oh, that's right, too. Yeah, I forgot. Did you see those emails, by the way?
I did.
Yeah. So, but to say, I didn't know who to call, there's two things going on here. Maybe there's a third possibility. One is you're lying, and the second is you're incompetent. And I
knowing Tressel as we do, we know that he's not incompetent. He's a lot
well,
of things.
Maybe he is incompetent. He's a great football coach, but maybe when it comes to the NCAA, he's just clueless. I suppose that's a possibility.
Rich, everyone has a boss. In this case, his boss is the athletic director.
Right. Well, you could call him.
Seems like a logical person to go to me.
There's an idea. But instead he said to the lawyer in reply, essentially, I'm trying to bang some heads and get these kids in line, that sort of thing. And,
there's no other way of looking at it other than he was trying to protect his football team.
Well, yeah. It's your star quarterback and some of your best players. And, a coach is going to do that. But when you get caught, to say, oh, I didn't know what to do, it seemed just, weak, basically. I thought.
Absolutely.
I think most people did, as a matter of fact. But Tressel did say later, I've tried to apologize all along. So, at any rate, a lot of people are suggesting that Tressel's punishment, a 2-game suspension, not nearly severe enough. The players are being suspended for 5 games. The players should have been suspended for the Sugar Bowl, but they weren't. And the NCAA came up with some nice reasoning on that as well, saying, well, people bought tickets to the Sugar Bowl expecting to see these players, so we can't suspend them.
Oh, and that's the most important thing, of course, is selling tickets and making sure that enough people go to the games. I mean, it's just such hypocrisy as we come to expect from the NCAA, which actually is one thing that makes me feel a little bit better about BYU for really standing on their principles.
Yeah, well, they did stand on their principles, but I I have a hard time with that situation because of the violation which was involved. Okay, this is not the only undergrad in America who's,
BYU is a unique institution, though. I mean, obviously,
you
take on that honor code, and he violated it, and I
he signed it. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you can certainly make that case, take that position, and but anyways, yes, you did, and I congratulate you for that. At any rate, what else is going on out there? Has the NCAA issued a final ruling on Michigan's violations under Rich Rodriguez? I don't think they have. It seems to me it's been dragging on for the longest time. When this story broke, and it was major news, here's Michigan cheating and everything else, when you went and read the NCAA report, it just struck me that the violations, and mind you, I'm a Michigan State guy, there's nothing I'd like better than to see Michigan wind up in a whole bunch of, get caught, if you will, and wind up in a whole bunch of trouble. I'm a Spartan, okay? That means I hate Michigan. There, I said it. And I'll always say it. But I'm reading this report, looking for the dirt. It wasn't there. What was going on is they had I didn't even know they had these. They had what are called quality control specialists, who are not members of the coaching staff, and essentially they'd have players after practice in the summer or in the summertime playing catch with a football, and the NCAA viewed that as a football-related activity, as a practice, essentially. Therefore, the players were spending too much time at practice, technically, all right? And the quality control personnel were acting as assistant coaches. They had overstepped their bounds. Now, I'd never heard, frankly, of quality control personnel involved in a college football program, but that was the whole deal right there. And I didn't think it was that big a deal, frankly. But what was, it seemed to me, was the fact that when Michigan, when Rich Rodriguez was asked to supply the documentation, he'd lost it. And it had to be, they had to go back and I hate to use the word make up, but he had to go back and fill out forms and what have you, and then submit them to the NCAA well after the fact.
To cover up being worse than the crime situation.
Yeah. Well, once again, I just finished reading, speaking of which, a great book about Watergate. And it turns out, I didn't realize this, but it turns out every crime in Watergate, at least the offenses for which people went to jail and for which Richard Nixon had to resign, all took place within 5 days of the break-in. The break-in's a pretty big crime in and of itself, but the lying to the FBI, or actually lying to the CIA, trying to get them to tell the FBI not to investigate the break-ins, that all occurred, the break-in was like on a Friday night, and by the following Wednesday, all the conversations that landed everybody in so much trouble had taken place. It was remarkable. And in fact, I had also read H.R. Haldeman's diary. And he kept copious notes of his time as Nixon's chief of staff. The book ran something like 800 pages. And his notation for the days where they were discussing Watergate just glossed right over it in a matter of 2 or 3 sentences. And these were his contemporaneous thoughts on what had occurred on a given day in the White House. And this was not treated as a big deal at all. But what they were doing was sinking themselves, and that's, there you have it. The cover-up is, I won't say worse than the crime, because there are certainly some crimes that are worse than the cover-up, but it is that cover-up which so often gets you. So, what else can we talk about? We can talk about the Michigan State University women's basketball team. They have been seeded number 4 in the NCAA women's tournament, which we think is, you'd like to think that the Big Ten champion, which the Spartans are, would be better than a number 4 seed. The coach of Tennessee, they're going to take on Michigan in the first round of the tournament. So quick, somebody help me with the time and the date and all that. Rachel, you had it a moment ago. Men's? Yes, men's. The men's tournament.
Michigan State plays Thursday night at 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Michigan plays 12:40.
12:40 on Friday.
12:40 on Friday. So it's Michigan and Tennessee, 12:40 on Friday. Michigan State, UCLA. I like that matchup, Michigan State, UCLA. And that's, again, Thursday night at 9:30, is it? So we got to stay up a little bit. Where's State playing? Is it Tucson?
UCLA? Oh, they're playing
they're
Tampa.
playing Florida. That's right, Tampa. And then Michigan's playing, are they playing in Tucson? Or am I just confused? I haven't got my bracket in front of me. Well, we'll delve more deeply into this as the week continues. It's only Tuesday. Heck, the play-in games aren't even until tomorrow. So, at any rate, there we go. I don't know. Let's read some notes and quotes from the Tigers' 4-2 victory over the Nats yesterday. Detroit with 3 runs in the 6th inning to snap a 1-1 tie. Brennan Bosch, who I think is one of the keys to the season, singled in a run, and Victor Martinez, also another key to the Tigers' season, the big free agent acquisition from Boston, hit a 2-run home run. That accounted for the 3-run rally that won the ball game for Detroit. Joaquin Benoit, Jose Valverde, and Daniel Schlereth pitched an inning apiece, and I should get a star, some bonus points for pronouncing each of those 3 names properly.
That's a strong effort.
It was, that wasn't
Back
too
of the
shabby.
bullpen's not easy on the pronunciations.
Yeah. So the question with the Tigers, Brennan Bosch, and I really do see him as a key, because do we see the Brennan Bosch we saw in the first half of the year? He was called up in mid-May, and it was kind of funny because we sort of had a pool going on in the press box as to when he would qualify for the batting title. You need 3.1 at-bats per game played, games that your team has played, to qualify for the batting title. He didn't reach that threshold until early July, about July 5th or 6th. And when he reached it, he was hitting 349, and he went from not appearing on the leaders to being second in the American League in hitting literally overnight. But from that point on, he hit 162 the rest of the year. So which Brennan Bosch do you get, the 350 hitter or the 160 hitter? I think that's a huge question for the Tigers this year. But again, baseball right around the corner. I couldn't be happier.
For me, this is the best time of the year, sports-wise.
It's all going on, isn't it?
Yeah. The NCAA tournament just rolls right into the Masters, then on into baseball beginning. It's
Love me the Masters. And then you've got, it's the hockey games mean something now. Playoff positioning going on there, and in the NBA and all the rest of it. There we go. All right. So that'll get us up to date on that. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on a Tuesday morning. We'll take a break, and we'll come back with more in just a moment. All right, Rich Kincaid back with you here in the American Metal Roofs studio, filling in for Michael Patrick, who is on his way to Ireland, along with Amanda K. Wall, Rachel Chavez, and Jordan McCarlton in the studio with us here as well on this Tuesday morning. And again, Michael Patrick broadcasting live from Ireland on Thursday on St. Patrick's Day. An officer involved shooting here in Lansing overnight has left a woman dead. She broke into a bank last night and then attacked an officer who went to investigate with a knife. The officer shot and killed the unidentified woman. This occurred around 3:30 this morning at the Bank of America at 3215 South Martin Luther King Boulevard. Meanwhile, in suburban Detroit, a shopper tried to rob a store at the Dearborn Town Center. She was caught. A high-speed chase ensued, and it ended when the woman committed suicide. So a couple of notes from the crime blotter here on this Tuesday morning. We continue to monitor the situation in Japan, where right now it is approaching 9 o'clock in the evening Tokyo time. They are 13 hours ahead of us, and we're just monitoring various blogs, not just any blogs, BBC News and Reuters primarily, just to again try to bring you the latest information on that. There is a report that radiation is reading 100 millisieverts during, or I should say near the number 4 reactor building, which last night our time, at about 5 p.m. last night, Eastern Daylight Time, exploded. So that is 4 explosions at that particular power plant in the last 3 days. Andy Hetzel is on the other end of our line right now. And Andy, I'll tell you what, we were talking about it in our last segment. The Tigers in spring training, they've got about 3 weeks to go until the baseball season starts. As far as I'm concerned, it's a spectator sport. I no longer participate actively in baseball on account of being too old. But, boy, it tells us that spring's here and it's time to get active, doesn't it? Oh, unfortunately, we can't hear Andy. So Andy, I'm sorry. We'll get you rescheduled. We're just having a minor technical difficulty here in our studio. Actually, it's not a minor technical difficulty. It is, in point of fact, a rather major technical difficulty because we can't. We're not getting our communication through our earphones, so I can't hear the caller on the other end of the line. So Andy was going to talk with us from Michigan Blue Cross Blue Shield about some of the things you can do to keep yourself in shape, get yourself in shape, get active. It's springtime, starting to warm up out there. You don't have to worry as much about slipping on ice and snow as it continues to melt. So we'll try and get Andy rescheduled, hopefully as soon as tomorrow, and we'll take care of that particular segment at that point.
Maybe even later today. We're working on this technical issue.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's the way to put it. It's a technical issue. It's at any rate, what we're doing right now. This is professional radio jargon. We're vamping. We have found ourselves. We had our whole segment planned out, because Amanda taught Rachel how to put together a show sheet. Be careful when you say that, by the way. And I'm holding it right here in my hand. It's a lovely thing, and it shows what time we're supposed to do the various elements of the program, and we can't do the elements when we're again having technical issues, which we are having right now. I hope this is clear to everybody. I would like to, as a matter of fact, but this is another thing we can't do. All morning I've been sort of thinking what we should do is check in with that NHK World Broadcast Network, which is Japanese television being delivered in English. It's remarkable how well the commentators on NHK speak English. They speak English better than I do.
They sound like they're from Ohio.
Exactly, and what it is information in real time coming from the scene of the disaster in Japan. So, and just to recap what has occurred in Japan, there was another explosion at a nuclear power facility, actually the same facility that has been causing all the problems here since the first reactor exploded on what would be Friday night our time. They've now had 4 explosions at that plant in the last 3 days, the most recent of which occurred at shortly after 6 a.m. today, Tokyo time, which would have been 5 o'clock last night our time. This explosion considered to be more substantial and potentially more damaging to the plant than had been the previous 3, because there are fears that this latest explosion compromised the containment vessel where the reactor actually is, and the containment vessel, well, it does what it's there to do, what what says it's supposed to do, contain the radioactive material inside of it. But there are concerns that the bottom blew out of this thing, and now radiation is being dispersed freely into the atmosphere. That's what the International Atomic Energy Agency is saying. Meteorologists are saying, in an optimistic note, that right now the wind is blowing out towards the Pacific Ocean, so that radiation is being dispersed over the ocean. The question is how much radiation, because, again, we were talking about this, if that stuff gets up into the jet stream, it'll hit the west coast of the United States in about 4 days, traveling at a speed of 50 miles per hour. So, again, something that we will continue to monitor as the morning continues. I'm Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick. We'll take a break and come back with more in just a moment. Well, we are delighted to report that we have fixed our technical issue. I can hear again. It's a wonderful thing. I want to let you know that Grand Traverse Tuesdays are sponsored by the Traverse City Convention Visitors Bureau, and indeed today is Grand Traverse Tuesday. Also, this segment brought to you by AARP, a membership organization leading positive social change and delivering value to people over the age of 50. Through information, advocacy, and indeed service. All right, let's see. We're supposed to be joined, and I don't know if we are, by Chuck Moss, state representative from Birmingham. Mr. Moss, are you there? Hello, Mr. Moss.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you? Good. Thanks for joining us.
Excuse me, I'm driving in. So what's going on?
Okay. Well, that was our question for you. What's going on with the the House Appropriations Committee?
Okay, well, the great one is on his way to the Emerald Isle. Okay, here's what's going on. We've got working on the budget. Obviously, it keeps moving along. There are a lot of people who don't like the governor's budget, and they're going to come and protest. And they've been kind of growing in numbers, and we're going to have a lot of them today because Governor Snyder has said we got to make some cuts and we got to do some changes. But when you make cuts and do changes, the people who are cutting change don't like it. But in the meantime, we're going to see what we can do about balancing our budget and getting our spending in line with our revenues.
Well, it's a state law that you have to balance the budget in this state, correct?
Oh, Constitution, yeah, absolutely. And we've been balancing it over the years. It's just that we've been balancing it with one-time fixes and, working on the credit card and cash and income streams and all kinds of stuff that just is not affordable anymore.
What do you think the situation is going to be like tomorrow? What sort of how many people do you think are going to show up, and what amount of attention will you pay to them?
Oh, I don't know. That's the thing about the Capitol is there's always something going on. It's the people's house, and when the people want to have their voices heard, it's a good place to go. And everybody's got a right, and I actually think more not just a right but a duty to come and make themselves heard. It's not going to be a lot of people. I know we had a lot of folks last week, and I think as the debate gets more heated, you're just going to have more and more people, and it may be messy, but it's democracy.
What don't you like about this budget?
Well, there's something in it for everybody not to like.
Yeah.
There's all kinds, but I've got a lot of people in my district. They don't like this or they don't like that. But one thing I didn't like was losing 54,000 people in the census. I don't like not having jobs. I don't like not having any business activity.
How is this going to? How will this budget?
We got to get this thing going.
How will this budget change those things that you don't like?
What we're going to do is what we've done over the years is load more and more tax burden onto businesses, and the businesses have responded by going away. What we want to do is and we've also had a number of credits and preferences and sort of one-offs, and preferences is a good word for this business or that business that the state government thinks is cool. But this lowers all the credits and the preferences, or most of them, down to a straight business tax. Makes us a Michigan a place where job providers can come and hopefully provide some jobs.
Mm-hmm. How do you? I guess my question is, how do you put an end to the battle between states? It's been a race, it seems to me, these last really couple of decades to see which state can provide the largest and the longest lasting tax abatement in order to lure that new manufacturing plant.
Well, that's actually the question. Because I remember when that thing started back in the 80s, I was writing columns for the news, and that was going to be the big thing. And everybody asked that question. What you do is you recognize that what we have is an uncompetitive and unhealthy business climate. And we've been sort of selling exemptions from that unhealthy climate and granting preferences to get you out from under. What we do is we make the underlying conditions good for everybody. Because we don't know maybe the future is windmills and batteries and Hollywood films, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something we have no idea. Who saw Facebook 10 years ago? No. So we make it a place where really anybody can come and try their ideas and businesses and go on from there. But this idea of we're going to give everybody tax abatements. We're out of money. We're out of other people's money to spend, and that's just the long and short of it. But you realize that we can't just compete in a great big auction. We run out of money.
Chuck, we've got just 1 minute left in the segment. We do thank you for joining us. The most high profile of those cuts is, of course, to the film industry. It's scaled back to $25 million. What impact do you expect that's going to have on Michigan's burgeon, or I should say, fledgling film industry?
They're all saying they're going to leave. They're all saying goodbye. Yeah. It's a 42% subsidy, and we don't have 42% of free money to give away to one industry. And why does that industry get the subsidy and others don't? This film, if it simply depends on us being the most, like you just said, the most lucrative tax abatement in the union, it's an unstable industry, and it's only going to stick around as long as we're subsidizing them. I'm hoping that they can stick around, and we've got enough stuff in Michigan to keep them coming. But if they've got to be paid off every minute, then I don't know. I know what the future holds.
Thanks, Representative. We'll look forward to seeing you at the Capitol tomorrow.
I'll be there. I'm there today. We'll see you.
Okay. State Representative of Birmingham, Chuck Moss, the House Appropriations Chair. All right, take a break. Be back with more of MPS in the morning. We'll see you later on the TV side, and we'll hope that you're on the radio end of things. You'll stick around with us.